Good evening, everyone. Peace and blessings, family. It's me, Coach 67 Sports TV. Shout out to the awesome and amazing LDBC, Lions Den Boxing Community. Shout out to Anthony O'Neill and the Impact Creative Society. Shout out to the greatest university in the world, the Southern University, home of the mighty Jaguars. In this particular episode of the Coaches Show, episode 3, our topics for today's show. First, we're going to talk about a little bit of boxing news, not much. Thereafter, we're going to transition to the U.S. men's Olympic basketball team. And lastly, we're going to talk about my favorite subject, which is Southern University football. First, in talking about boxing news, for the most part, there's not a whole lot in boxing that really moves me. The big topic that I'm intrigued about and that I'm interested in is the fact that Vasil High-Tech Lomachenko, he ducked Tank Davis. And in doing so, it left a window open for Tank and Shakur Stevenson to fight. I don't think those two gonna fight. As of right now, Shakur Stevenson is a promotional free agent, but I don't think those two gonna fight anytime soon, if ever. This is part of the reason why I'm not a huge boxing fan in 2024. It's not like when I was younger, when I was coming up, the best fighters want to fight the best fighters. And fans of that fighter wanted their favorite fighter to fight the best fighters. In 2024, fans of that particular fighter, they feel as if that fighter doesn't have to prove anything, and they want their favorite fighter to duck the best possible competition, which to me is ridiculous. I know my favorite fighters, whether we talking about the Bronx Bomber Deontay Wilder, whether we talking about Devin the Dream Haney, whether we talking about Errol Spence Jr., I want my favorite fighters to fight the best possible competition. I don't want them to duck anyone. I don't want them to duck any smoke. I want them to fight the best possible competition. And I don't want to debate back and forth. I want my favorite fighter in whoever's deemed to be potential competition. I want them to fight so they can prove who's the better fighter, as opposed to us debating back and forth about who the best fighter is. To me, it's stupid. I really don't like it. That's just my personal opinion. Before I transition to the next topic, salute to the Autism Boy College 81. Salute, Coach Bro, Coach 7 Sports TV. Salute to you, bro. But that's my take on the Tank versus Shakur fight. I don't think it's gonna happen. I think Tank fans are synonymous for saying Tank doesn't have to prove anything. He doesn't have to fight anyone. The biggest wins in Tank's career at this point is Frank Martin and I'm going to say maybe Eastside Pitbull Cruz. Those are the biggest wins of his career. He never fought Mr. Gary Russell Jr. He didn't fight Tevin Farmer. He didn't fight Devin Haney. He didn't fight Loma. Even though Loma did duck him, we can't deny it at this point, because by all signs, from everything I'm hearing, Tank ducked a fight with Loma. Loma ducked the fight with Tank. I guess he was afraid to get knocked out, but he ducked that fight. Let's just be real. Loma Duck fight with Tank. And Tank, man, he didn't fight the best possible competition. I mean, he ducked Tevin Farmer. He ducked Mr. Gary Russell Jr. He ducked Devin the Dream Haney. Him and Shakur Stevenson never fought. He never fought Loma. So, I mean, that's all the best possible competition he could fight. The biggest wins on his resume to me, like I said, is Frank Martin and Pitbull Cruz. Seems as if he's headed towards a rematch with Pitbull Cruz. Salute to my brother Jared 11 Green. So those are the biggest names on his resume. Getting ready to transition to the next subject. Okay, transitioning to the next subject. The U.S. Olympic basketball team. The U.S. Olympic team have been having their struggles. Even though they beat the Canadian team, which features Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and Jamal Murray, they beat them by 14. They struggled a few times. First, they nearly lost recently. They almost lost to. I'm not going to say they won. They survived against South Sudan. They beat South Sudan by 1 point. They beat Germany by 4 points. So they've been having quite a few struggles recently. So they survived. And they got a 1 point win against South Sudan. So they have a 1 point win against South Sudan. They have a 4 point win against Germany. They've been struggling as of late. I think the biggest part of their problem is the fact that Steve Kerr, in my estimation, he's doing a terrible job in terms of his rotations and who he's playing, who he should be starting. From a coaching standpoint, to me, it's obvious that Joel Embiid is not 100%. I don't think he should be starting at the 5 spot. If it was me, my starting lineup would be Steph Curry at the point, Anthony Edwards at the 2 spot. At the 3, I would put LeBron James. And at the 4 and 5 spot, I would start Bam Adebayo and Anthony Davis. That would be my starting lineup. Off the bench, Jason Tatum would be my 6th man off the bench. And outside of those 6 individuals, the only other 2 players I would have in my rotation is Joel Embiid. He wouldn't start. I mean, he's clearly, I'm not going to say he's injured, but he's clearly hurt. He's been laboring quite a bit. I wouldn't start him. I would bring him off the bench for either Bam or Anthony Davis. I would sub Jason Tatum for LeBron James. And besides those 7 players, the only other 1 player I would bring off the bench is Jrue Holiday. I would either sub him for Steph Curry or Anthony Edwards. That would be my 8-man rotation until a game is completely out of reach. Then I would bring in Derek White, Tyrese Halliburton, Devin Booker. I will bring those guys in once the game is completely out of reach. Now, in terms of Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant has been hurt during this run. I think he would be the guy that really would carry that next roster with Devin Booker and Tyrese Halliburton, Derek White, Jordan Embiid. He would be the guy I would use to carry that next unit. But without him, to me, seems like a lot of those guys aren't effective. So those individuals like Colin Cowherd is making this ridiculous argument saying that this version of the U.S. Olympic team is much better than the Dream Team. It's ridiculous. The Dream Team would smash this current version of the U.S. Olympic team. And just listening to Colin Cowherd's argument is ridiculous. He tried to, for this particular team, I think arguably Jason Tatum is arguably the best player on this team as a current NBA player. So what he tried to do is cherry pick. For example, he said Jason Tatum is better than Scottie Pippen. Now, player for player, he might have a valid argument. However, as a role player, Scottie Pippen was a much better fit to any team than I think Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum, to me, seems at this point he's more of a player that you feature as opposed to a player that could be a role player on your team. And he said LeBron James was much better than that version of Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. Cool. But to me, his argument is disingenuous from the perspective of he's not going by best player for best player. That version of Michael Jordan is much better than this version of Jason Tatum or any other player that would be considered one of your top players on the U.S. Olympic team at this point. Now, of course, individuals like Colin Cowherd, their argument is, the rest of the world is much better. Yeah, he did say LeBron. He said LeBron James is better than that version of Magic and Bird, because basically what he's saying is Magic and Bird were much older players, and this older version of LeBron is much better than that older version of Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. So what he did was he went down the line and cherry-picked players for his argument. He also used Anthony Davis. I think he compared Anthony Davis maybe to Patrick Ewing. But the point I'm trying to make is basically, in the context of his argument, all he did was cherry pick players he deemed to be better than the player that could be considered comparable to them, which to me is ridiculous. If you look at the starting lineup for the Dream Team, you had Magic, you had MJ, you had Scottie Pippen, you had Charles Barkley, you had Patrick Ewing. But, one thing he doesn't realize is, first of all, in terms of pieces, like a puzzle, that version of the U.S. Olympic team, shout out to Big Reg, host of Big Boy Talk. Salute to you, bro. But that version of the U.S. Olympic team, like a puzzle, the pieces fit together much better, in my opinion. But from a defensive standpoint, I think the thing that took that version of the U.S. Olympic team, the Dream Team, to a whole nother stratosphere is the fact that that version of MJ and Mike, MJ and Scottie, you could take Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, and you could put them on the court together, and literally the both of them was going to pick up maybe the two best wing players on the opposing team. They was going to pick them up full court, 94 feet, and harass them. On this version of the U.S. Olympic team, you don't have two dominant defensive wing players that can do that. Even if you put Drew Holiday and Derek White, any version of those two players, along with Anthony Edwards, I don't think defensively they can wreak the same havoc that Jordan and Pippen were able to do in terms of picking up two players 94 feet, harassing them, turning them over. I don't think you have two players on this team that can do that and I'm unapologetic about it. Also, you had much more dominant post play when you look at Patrick Ewing, David Robinson, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone. From an interior standpoint, the Dream Team was much more dominant than this current version of the U.S. Olympic team. And my final point is Chuck Daly, even though he only won 2 championships with the Pistons, and Steve Kerr has won 4 championships with the Golden State Warriors, he was a much better coach than Steve Kerr is at this point. Man, the rotations are just ridiculous. A huge part of them blowing up. A huge lead against Team Australia. And them struggling against Team Germany in the South Sudan. A lot of it is Steve Kerr's coaching and his rotations from a coaching standpoint. Like I said, that lineup I gave earlier with, with Steph, Anthony Edwards, LeBron James, Bam Adebayo, Anthony Davis. I think that's the best version, the best starting 5 he could put out. And Jrue Holiday and Jason Tatum and Joel Embiid. That would be my 8-man rotation. And like I said, we don't know if Kevin Durant is going to get to play on this team. It seems as if he's still hurt. Who knows? And my final point is those, without Kevin Durant, those other 4 guys, Derek White, Tyrese Halliburton, Devin Booker, I really wouldn't play those guys unless the lead is completely out of reach. I know that's one of the competitive advantage they have over a lot of teams is the fact that they're much deeper. But if the unit with Booker and Derek White and these guys, if they keep blowing leads, man, I mean, to me, that's the issue that you have. He said, "Oh, remember when Chuck Daly had Dennis Rodman and Isaiah here?" Yeah, I do. And Chuck Daly coached the Pistons, the Nets, and the Magic, by the way. Yeah. So I think that concludes the Dream Team is better than this current U.S. Olympic team. To me, it's not even close. Not only if you look at the margin of victory between the Dream Team and this current U.S. Olympic team, even in an NBA, actual NBA game or under, in the NBA atmosphere, man, that version of the U.S. Olympic team was so much better than this current version. To me, it's ridiculous. And that brings me to the next point concerning the Dream Team. Recently, Gilbert Arenas, he made some insensitive comments about the South Sudan. This is my issue with this entire scenario. To me, when it comes to Black people, is a lot of self-hate. And the reason I say that is because when the U.S. blew the lead against Australia and they nearly lost to Germany, he didn't make those same kind of comments towards those teams that he made towards the South Sudan. And to me, I hear a lot of people, a lot of Black people in particular, talking about, the FBA argument or the fundamental Black American. To me, I think that FBA argument is not a good nor valid argument unless you're talking about the topic of reparations. But to me, white supremacy, whether it's slavery, whether it's colonization, to me, like Black people, they don't have the luxury to have all this tribalism and be dissected into these different groups. We don't have the advantage of tribalism as other groups and other races of people have. I mean, if anything, we need to be unified on all fronts. American Black people don't have the luxury of saying, hey, we gonna disassociate ourselves from Africans or from Caribbean, Black people from the Caribbean, from different parts of the world. If anything, it should be unity, but that's one thing, that we really don't have in the Black community. It's not unity across the board. Just think about it from a political standpoint. Joe Biden in the last election when he was running, basically he told Charlamagne tha God that if you don't vote for him, you're not Black. To me, which is ridiculous. Do you think he would have told any other group of any other race of people, hey, if you don't vote for me, you're not black. It's ridiculous. So, but for Gilbert Arenas to make those comments towards South Sudan, and I made those same comments towards Germany or Australia or some of these other teams that the U.S. Olympic basketball team has been struggling against, to me is ridiculous. So at least he apologized, but I would have preferred he didn't make those comments that he made. To me, they're extremely insensitive, and I think it kind of reflects a little bit of self-hate because it reminds me of when I had a student in my class, and that's one thing about the school where I teach. For the most part, kids, when it comes to smoke, they have the same smoke for everybody. If they feel disrespected, they're going to go at anybody. I don't care if it's a teacher, an administrator, the principal, school resource officer, another student. Like they have the same smoke for everybody. But this one particular day, this black student in my class, he got into a little dust up with a Hispanic kid. And basically, he had grace for the Hispanic kid. And, he really wanted to do himself, but he kind of backed off. The Hispanic kid apologized because, that's one thing that's more prevalent at the school where I teach. The Hispanic population is increased. But, the Hispanic kid apologized. Evidently, I think he told him something he didn't like. It wasn't anything racial, but the kid was offended and basically he wanted to beat him up. But before I could even get there, the rest of the students kind of, they kind of squashed the situation because basically they just wanted to play basketball at the end of the day. So they just was like, hey, man, chill out. And they squashed the situation. Then another black student had a similar incident with him later on during the class period, and he had no grace for him. And I'm like, hold up, son. I'm like, come here. I'm like, do you see the difference between the two scenarios? I don't understand what you're saying, coach. I'm like, son, look, when you and the Hispanic kid over there, when y'all got into it, like you forgave him once he apologized. This kid that looks more like you, and that's the same race as you had no grace for him. Like you still want all the smoke. You still want to fight him. You want to fight in both instances, but when it came to the Hispanic kid, you was willing to turn the other cheek and keep things pushing. In this scenario, like you really not willing to let it go. And he thought about what I was saying. He was like, Coach, you're right. I'm like, you don't see that being a problem? And he was like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, son, on a certain level, to a certain degree, it seems like you have a little bit of self-hate. And he was like, what you mean I don't hate myself? And I'm like, no, son, from a racial standpoint, it seems as if you've been preconditioned to not have grace for other black people, but have grace for other groups of people. When I sat down and I kind of broke it down to him, he apologized to the other student, and he was like, Coach, you're right. I didn't see it from that perspective. And I'm like, well, at least, unlike a lot of students at our school, at least he was willing to apologize and say, hey, I understand. I see where I'm wrong, because a lot of other students, they wouldn't have saw it and they just would have kept it pushing. So I think that's the issue we have as black people in America is, or maybe just black people just globally. White supremacy has preconditioned us so much to hate ourselves. It's like we do these type of things. And I think that's the biggest situation when it comes to Gilbert Arenas and the South Sudan situation. I think it's a bit of self-hate. If you felt comfortable making those jokes about South Sudan, why you didn't feel comfortable making jokes about the Australian national basketball team or the German basketball team? To me, it's just ridiculous. And the final topic I'm going to address before I get out of here, final topic is my favorite subject, Southern University football. So in terms of the transfer portal, SU recruiting spotlight, breaking news, former 4-star Texas Southern and Jackson State transfer, 5'11", 200 pounds, wide receiver Quay Davis from Dallas, Texas, has announced his commitment to Southern University last week. Willie Bolden and and Jay Good and a couple of the individuals that were in the chat, basically they were saying that Southern University really don't get the big name players that they once got. And basically I was saying Southern still get a lot of big name players. They still have a lot of talent. I think more than anything, you need the right head coach, which I think Terrence Graves is. Hopefully, he's the right head coach. You need the right quarterback. Hopefully, more than likely, it seems as if when I'm hearing and understanding, Noah still is kind of the front runner. I think Coach Graves made it clear he's really not selecting a starting quarterback as of this very moment. But to me, it seems like Noah is going to be the starting quarterback. Even though Angelo Izzo Jr., he did transfer to Southern. So it's a 4 quarterback race at this point as opposed to a 3 quarterback race. Many individuals think, just like last year, they thought Jalen Woods and Zay Tessett were the 2 most talented quarterbacks on the roster. You have a couple individuals saying the same thing, but Angelo Izzo Jr., but I think that's more of a local bias more than anything, even though Zay Tessett is from Scotlandville High, which is like a couple minutes down the road, maybe about 5 minutes down the road from Southern. Angelo Izzo Jr. went to Southern Lab, which is on the same campus as Southern University. But either or, I think, is a certain gravitation towards the local players when it comes to Jaguar Nation. But more than anything, I think it shows that Southern could still get talented players. But I think the thing Willie Bolden was saying and Jay Good, they were saying in terms of like the elite level talent, like the undeniable talent, like the Michael Hayeses, the Willie Quinns, those type of guys. I think that's what they were referring to. But even with that being said, I think Southern bringing in Quay Davis, I think it's going to definitely bolster their wide receiver core in a major way. And I think it shows that Southern kind of still has that pedigree in terms of having a lot of talent on their roster. I think they just need the right coach to bring everything together. I think they need to have the right quarterback. And I think the offensive line play, to me, which is the biggest issue, I think if they can get the offensive line play straight and the secondary straight, I think everything else will take care of itself based on what I saw in a blue versus gold game this past spring. But I think more than anything, I think as a Southern University fan, one thing about this point in the year, especially late August, early September, I think everyone has a certain degree of hope for their team in terms of, unless you maybe like a team in the SWAC like maybe Mississippi Valley, maybe Texas Southern. I think everybody has a certain degree of hope and they believe their team is going to be successful and their team is going to do well. But I think at the end of the day, I think Southern has all the tools to be successful. I think if Coach Graves can push the right buttons, not only him, but his assistant coaches, I think if they can push the right buttons, I think Southern is going to be successful. And even though for SWAC Media Day, they were picked to come in 4th in the SWAC West, I'm encouraged by the fact that the SWAC West is wide open. There's no real clear-cut dominant team in the SWAC West. So I think at the end of the day, I think Southern is going to be okay. I think they're going to be straight. And I think they're going to surprise a lot of people because when you pick Ford to come in the SWAC West, there's no real pressure on you to succeed. No pressure on you to do well. There's no pressure for you to win the SWAC West and then go on and win the SWAC Championship and then go on and win the Celebration Bowl and win the Black National Championship. There's no real pressure. So I think at the end of the day, I think Southern is going to be successful. And I think they're going to be straight as long as they could fix what's broken in terms of their roster, in terms of the offensive line play, the secondary. I think they're going to be okay. So I'm getting ready to wrap episode 3 of the Coaches Show up. I appreciate the Autism Boy, Cottage 81. Appreciate my brother Jared O'Lovin Green. I appreciate Big Reg, host of Big Boy Talk. I appreciate everybody that came through, that stopped by, that showed their love and showed their support. I appreciate you to the highest. Appreciate everybody that's going to watch this on playback. Tomorrow, the Southern Baller Show with my brother Jared 11 Green on his channel. You know, who knows who's going to be on the show, whether it's going to be he and I. You know, of course, JB is going to be on his twin. Maybe Brent Fox, maybe the brother Jay Good, maybe the brother Big Joe Townsend. So come over tomorrow to his channel, Jared 11 Green's channel, and catch the Southern Baller Show on my channel on Tuesday, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're going to try to do episode 2 of HBCU Fanatics, where we talk about MEAC Media Day early this week. Also, go check out my brother Brent Fox with his show. It's just me starring Brent Fox. So check out Brent Fox on his channel with his show. It's just me starring Brent Fox. Also check out my brother Cadillac Red, Supreme Beast Boxing Talk. You know, he has a couple different shows. He has Views from the LAC. He has BSN on the Beltway. So go check out my brother Cadillac Red. And also check out my brother Trill Will. Go check out all these LDC brethren of mine. Go check them out. Go show them support also. I appreciate everybody that came through, that dropped by, that showed some love. And support all these content creators that, you know, dropped in, that came through to show some love. Y'all go check them all out. I appreciate everybody that came through, that dropped in, that dropped by to show some love. Hopefully y'all enjoyed episode 3 of the Coaches Show, because that was my intent from the beginning, to be here for a good time, but not for a long time. You did. But hopefully y'all enjoyed the show. I'll catch y'all on the rebound. Y'all have a blessed and phenomenal evening. Peace and blessings to everyone.